Hello, I am the Chief Developmental Officer of Burundi, and I would like to submit a proposal for the development of Burundi to this fine board of committee members. Firstly, I'd like to give some background information. Economically, Burundi has the lowest GDP per capita in the world, and this entails the fact that this pertains to the fact that GDP has the lowest income per capita in the world, and it's the GDP. Its composition by sector of GDP is 31% in agriculture, whereas in terms of labor force, the agricultural labor force makes up 93% of Burundi's labor force. And these economic factors quite significantly show that Burundi has an overdependence on um, Burundi has an overdependence on primary commodities and on its agricultural sector. And this, in essence, shows that Burundi is a less developed country because it doesn't have a burgeoning industrial or service sector, even though services make up around almost 50% of Burundi's GDP. Public debt is at 1.2 billion, which is a small percentage of its GDP. So Burundi generally pays back its loans. Socially, Burundi's Human Developmental Index value is at 0.316, which is actually much lower on average than sub-Saharan Africa, and it's ranked 185th in the world, um, which is very low. It's the eighth fastest growing country with a 3.1% growth rate annually, and six children are born to the average Burundian woman, which in turn suggests that Burundi has yet to experience a sense of economic development because the fact that these fertility rates are so high are generally um, decent indicators that the country is developing. Educational expenditure is only 8.3% of GDP. Um, this is also reflected by the fact that only one in two children actually go to school in Burundi, and with with possibly a higher expenditure of its GDP, Burundi can make education much more pervasive and can lift its citizens out of poverty through an emphasis on education. The school life expectancy for males is around 10 years, and for females it's 7. And this is also another indicator of a lack of economic development because of the lack of equality between males and females. If Burundi were to make women completely equal in the labor force, then they could effectively increase their labor force by twofold. Um, if Burundian women don't actually take part in the workforce. Um, the life expectancy at birth is extremely low at 57 and a half years. This is a reflection of Burundi's economic development as well as its healthcare sector and the fact that its development or its public goods sector is extremely ill developed, and as a result, its dependency ratio is actually very high because uh, Burundi actually has an extremely low median age, with around 46% of its population between the ages of 0 and 14. Um, this, in essence, means that um, there are the median population of Burundi is extremely young, and this could also be because of the life expectancy at birth being so young, um, but also because of the fertility rate and its level of development that dependency ratios are so high in Burundi. Burundi actually faces several obstacles to economic development. Um, it it suffers from all of Paul Collier's developmental traps, such as the conflict trap, the natural resource trap, the geography trap, and the education or poor governance trap. For instance, Burundi has been caught in a civil war since 1990, and there's continued violence between the ethnic minorities and majorities, between the Hutu and the Tutsi people. Sorry. Um, Burundi is also quite poor in terms of natural resources. It has a lot of fertile land. However, in terms of natural minerals or goods that aren't primary commodities, that aren't agricultural produce, Burundi doesn't have much of, and that actually leads to an overdependence on primary commodities. Burundi is also landlocked, and therefore that severely hampers trade. Burundi is quite isolated from the international market, and as a result, it wasn't impacted at all by the economic recession. Educationally, Burundi is very underdeveloped. As I said before, I think 1 in 2 school children go to school, and Burundi's government is also quite corrupt, and it has an ineffective tax structure. But also with 93% of its citizens in agriculture, um, it can't gain that much revenue from its citizens anyway. So, Burundi, this is a bit of a checklist. Burundi has low standards of living, incredibly low incomes, incredibly poor health, inadequate education, low levels of productivity, high rates of population growth and dependency burdens. Um, Unemployment data is actually not applicable. Dependence on agricultural production and primary product exports, imperfect markets, and also dependency on foreign developed countries for trade, access to technology, foreign investment, and aid. So basically, out of these points, all but two are applicable to Burundi. Burundi has a huge obstacle to its development. Burundi also has large potential. For instance, coffee and tea make up 90% of foreign exchange earnings and exports, and there's a huge demand for Burundian coffee, as is evidenced by coffee exports going up by 21% in January of 2012. Um, Burundi's also had an annual growth rate of 4% from 2006 to 2011, and Burundi has an extremely high potential for labor, as is evidenced by its extremely low median age. Um, and Burundi is also the optimal climate for coffee growing and also for other agricultural products such as maize and cotton. And I'd like to get into a bit about the project that I would like to implement. The project is similar to an educational initiative in the sense that um, I aim to give cooperatives the knowledge to correctly process their coffee and to effectively grow their crops sustainably, therefore significantly contributing to its value and also their overall productivity. And this will be done um, through, oh, I'm sorry, this should be a 30. So basically, um, the Burundian government would be working in conjunction with a nonprofit organization called Kabi, which would um, essentially ask 30 horticulturists to supply these local Burundian cooperatives, these farming communes, with sustainable knowledge and, sustainable ways of farming and knowledge as to how to make this happen, and also to increase the value of their product and increase their productivity. Um, this in turn should decrease the agricultural labor force and increase migration to cities and other areas of employment. And this would lead to development of a secondary sector because these Burundian farmers will actually have disposable income to save and therefore have investment on. This project would take place between June 15th and August 15th, 2012, and it would be called the Attainment of Agricultural Knowledge Initiative, and it would be mainly focused around the Great Lakes region of Burundi, which is the most fertile region of Burundi. And these horticulturists effectively would go about to each of these communes and give these farmers the know-how to productively increase their output, but also increase the value of their output, especially in terms of coffee processing. Um, like if coffee is processed correctly, it has an extremely high profit margin, and therefore, once these Burundian coffee cooperatives or these Burundian communes are given the knowledge or the know-how to effectively increase the value of their produce and increase the output of their produce, um, they should effectively develop a surplus economy rather than a subsistence economy, as has been the case in much of Burundi. So similar projects have also been done by this nonprofit organization called Kabi. They had a coffee processing initiative in Rwanda, in which they hired horticulturists to go and speak to these coffee communes about effectively processing their coffee and drying it out. And they had a very high success rate. I think roughly um, these coffee communes, their their income increased by roughly twofold just with this attainment of knowledge as to how to effectively process this coffee. So now the financial analysis. Um, this is a rough estimate for one horticulturist. So their living cost for 2 months would approximately be $100. Transport would be 300, and their expertise would be paid for at around $200 for the 2 months. So the total cost would come to around um, $18,000. Um, this would actually be a loan to the Burundian government, in the sense that we would be loaning this expertise to the Burundian government, and over time they would pay back the $18,000 in monthly installments with a high level of interest, so as to give us a rate of return. So with around 12% interest annually, we'd be making $2,160, and spread out over 18 months, the government would be paying around $1,000 per month. And effectively, within 18 months, these loans would be paid completely, and this could also lead to uh, a I'm sorry, a this could also lead to the development of a secondary sector in the sense that once these communes and these cooperatives effectively know their knowledge and have effectively paid their knowledge or their loans back, they can start to build up capital and therefore become more productive and lead to an increase in disposable income, hopefully bringing Burundi out of poverty. Um, that is my developmental project. I hope you found it interesting. Thank you very much for listening.